Hey all, welcome to ShareTreck Sunday edition. Hope you are having a great weekend so far. Today I want to once again look at my favorite genomic share, which is CRISPR Therapeutics. So let's get started. It's been a while since we looked into CRISPR Therapeutics, and one of the main reasons why I decided to do this particular video was because since CVC lost to Broad Institute and subsequently filed its appeal at the federal court, we haven't heard anything from CRISPR Therapeutics with regard to how it plans to manage its IP defect, because CRISPR Therapeutics has to make sure that its IP is sound before it can commercially market its therapies. And as you know, that there are a few of those CRISPR Therapeutics pipeline items which are in advanced stage of clinical trials, are on the verge of getting a BLA. Prime among them is CTX001, which has always been my focus. That's why I started this video, and while I was doing the research, I could not find any information, no press release, nothing about what CRISPR plans to do. Ideally, I would have expected that we might get some information regarding a reserve being created to pay Broad Institute in order to regularize the IP. That's very much possible because this company is cash rich and it can afford to do that. Maybe something like that, or some other information on what their strategy is going to be in case CVC did not win the appeal. Those things are not available. Then the next best thing I thought I could do was to talk about what should be the target price. So we're going to do a valuation exercise. I want to talk a little bit about the pipeline and talk about the FDA approval process. What is the percentage probability? And then talk about each of the pipeline items that we have got here. And for my pricing, I've just assumed that CTX001 is successful. And if you ask me when is the price target going to be effective, I would say that it would be when FDA decides to approve CTX001. So this is the best I could do with my limited resources and ability. My pricing model uses a probability factor. So I want to explain to you the FDA approval process in a very brief manner so that you can understand the probability of success and form your own opinion. So the very first phase of the approval process involves around 2,200 healthy individual volunteers with the condition that is being tested, and the duration is around several months, and its basic objective is only to measure whether it is safe to apply the therapy. It's not even looking at the efficacy at this point, and the success rate in this phase is 70%, so there is very low risk of failure. The second phase involves several hundred patients with the subject condition, and the duration can go all the way up to 2 years depending on the condition that is being treated and how complex it is. And this is going to involve not only measuring the safety but also efficacy, and it has to cross the threshold of efficacy that FDA requires, considering existing approved products or lack thereof. And that bar has to be cleared, and only 30% of candidates in phase 2 succeed and go into the next phase. And in the third phase, which is where the approval takes place and a drug gets an NDA or a BLA, has the largest number of patients with the condition being treated, and the duration can be anywhere from 1 year to 4 years, again depending on the complexity of the condition being treated and the steps involved in the therapy. It's going to take a particular duration, maximum around 4 years. And the objective here is to measure both safety and efficacy and fine-tune the dosages in some cases, which will be consolidation dosing, and providing all the necessary information possible in what is called as a regulatory filing with the FDA. And the FDA will look at it and ask any extra information it needs. And if it is satisfied, it will give what is called as a BLA, which will allow or NDA, which will allow the company to market the products and start commercializing the drug or therapy. And in phase 4, what happens is ongoing monitoring of the progress depending on based on all the wide intake of the drug or therapy, and necessary corrective actions or holds as required will be applied by FDA. So that's the whole process. So given the fact that most of our candidates in the pipeline for CRISPR Therapeutics have reached the clinical trial stage and are on the verge of doing regulatory submissions, we can feel comfortable that the light is very close to the end of the tunnel. And I'm going to talk more about each of the individual pipeline items right now. And remember, my assumption is that only CTX001 is going to get approved, and it's going to be the first one off the gate. And my price estimate is based on that. Looking at the pipeline here, CTX001 will treat beta thalassemia, that is TDT, and sickle cell disease. And for this, CRISPR Therapeutics has said that regulatory submissions will be planned for late 2022. So before this communication came, there would have been doubts about whether the therapy is going fine or not, because as you have seen in phase 3, you have only a 59% success rate. Given the fact that they are going to make a regulatory submission late 2022, we can assume that they are on the right track and the possibility of getting an FDA approval is much higher. So right now, I think they are working on consolidation dosing. So we'll wait to hear for more information from CRISPR Therapeutics. And I've assumed CTX001 will be the first one off the track with the FDA approval, and that's where monetization will start for CRISPR Therapeutics. Next one is CTX110, which will treat CD19. The progress reported so far is that their trial data indicates calibrating dosage will produce optimum results. So consolidation dosing trials are in progress, and the data for phase 1 will come later this year. At what point of time, we do not know. However, we know that regulatory submissions are planned for end of this year, following which we should expect a BLA. That's the general sequence. CTX120 is the next one, which will treat relapsed myeloma. Consolidation dosing is in progress with data expected in the first half of 2022. So when we have the next earnings call from CRISPR, we should hear some information about CTX120. And then the other candidate, CTX130, will target CD70 to treat solid tumors and hematologic malignancies. Right now, consolidation dosing is in progress with data expected in the first half of 2022. Again, this is something we would probably hear from CRISPR Therapeutics in the earnings call at the end of the second quarter. So that's where we are with regard to these therapies. Now, if we go on to look at the next part of the pipeline, we find VCTX, which is a collaboration with ViaCyte. It's in phase 1 clinical trial for treatment of type 1 diabetes. And recently, that is around a few months ago, we were told that the first patient has been dosed. The goal of the current clinical trial is to allow the patients to create their own insulin within their own bodies. We don't have much more information about this right now, but it's in a clinical trial, and potentially it's likely to progress further to a stage where they will be in a position to file regulatory submissions. We'll hear about that much more in subsequent earning calls. Now, I'd like to talk to you about the conclusions that I have reached based on what information we have so far. The success will depend on the cost of the therapy, the success of CTX001. There will be price competition because we got Beam as well as Bluebird also nipping at the heels of CRISPR Therapeutics for sickle cell disease therapy. So there will be price competition, and allogeneic CAR T therapy is most likely to succeed because of ease of use, and also it's likely to be having a lower cost, because when you have allogenic offerings, they do not need special lab facilities to take blood or samples out of the patient and to process and put it back. That's where the major cost and logistic element comes in. So there is likely to be a good opportunity for CRISPR Therapeutics to succeed with the CAR T therapy when it comes to pricing as well. So there are 15 analysts who have given ratings so far, and 8 have a hold rating and 1 has a sell rating. That's how the market is viewing CRISPR Therapeutics. So those who already have CRISPR Therapeutics, if you're going to do dollar cost averaging downward or upward, it seems that there is a clear go ahead, because most of the analysts have a buy rating, and just only 1 has a sell rating. So at this point of time, personally, I wouldn't sell any CRISPR Therapeutics. That's my personal opinion. CTX001 likely to be first approved. As I said, resolving pricing will be a major concern. Part of the cost could be that it is autologous. As I mentioned earlier, you need some special facilities and logistical issues to collect samples and process them and send it back and do very individualized training. BLAs can be delayed, as we have seen in the case of Bluebird. And if that happens, then there is likely to be some problem for CRISPR Therapeutics. Of course, they have got much more money in their balance sheet than Bluebird has, but they still have to address the IP issue. So we do not know how much that is going to cost. So there is a bit of a risk factor out there. In terms of target price estimates, I have taken CDC data, and it says that the total number of babies born with sickle cell trait in 2010 was estimated to be greater than 60,000. This is one data point I have. So when we talk about sickle cell trait, this is like being a carrier. So there is a dormant gene out there which is not expressed, but it can be passed on to the offspring. And if the other partner also has sickle cell trait, then there's a good chance that the child will have sickle cell disease. That's my understanding. So there were around 60,000 or more than 60,000 babies born with sickle cell trait. And on an average, 100,000 Americans are affected by sickle cell disease. Most of them are Blacks and Hispanics. The treatment price, I do not have this from CRISPR Therapeutics, but I have found other people who are doing research submitting that it's going to cost around $2 million for each treatment. It's a once and go treatment. And assuming that around 2% of the target population can afford being treated, we have a total revenue of around $4 billion that is potentially possible if CTX001 was approved by FDA and it was marketed for a period of time. So that's a revenue potential I think can accrue to CRISPR Therapeutics on an annual basis. This is my assumption. Assuming 50% revenue share, we have $2 billion in sales. Revenue currently is $915 million and the share price is 49.62. So I worked out a factor which I call as the multiplier. So based on the current revenue of 915 million, we have a share price of 49.62. And by applying the factor, I come to a share price of 108.46. And the big question mark is, when is this going to happen? When the full sales of 4 billion is realized and a revenue share of 2 billion is realized, we can expect to have a share price of 108.46 for CRISPR Therapeutics. And this is a very, very conservative estimate from my side, because I assumed that all the other therapies which are in the verge of regulatory submission, they are not succeeding. I'm just assuming CTX001 succeeds. And I've taken a very, very small percentage of the population, assuming the affordability is going to be a question. But if CRISPR Therapeutics was to do a good amount of lobbying and negotiation with the government in order to get some subsidies in place, then there could be much more uptake. So I have taken a very, very small percentage at this point of time. And this can be a recurring sales pattern for the company going forward. And with greater production and streamlining of the capabilities, probably the costs would also likely come down. So it's been a very, very conservative estimate. I'm feeling confident that we should look at 108.46. The only thing I cannot tell you is, when is this price target going to come? So this is where all the uncertainty comes in. And as CRISPR Therapeutics starts giving us information with every subsequent earnings call, the price will start getting refined and the market will progress towards 108.46. And this is assuming that there is no share dilution. And I do not find any reason why there could be share dilution, because CRISPR Therapeutics has got enough funds in its balance sheet. And when it comes to regularizing CRISPR IP, if CVC was to lose the appeal at the federal court, we already have an indication from Broad Institute that they would like to share the IP and continue forward. So I'm not thinking that it's going to cost too much for CRISPR Therapeutics to remove the defect from its IP, and that it will still have enough money in its balance sheet, and therefore it would not need to do any more share dilution. So that is the conclusion that I have come up with. I would like to know what you think about my my approach and the information that I provided to you. If you have some other information that can be helpful, please share in the comments below. And do you think that 108.46 is a reasonable price for CRISPR Therapeutics, assuming it survives the FDA approval process and CTX001 gets approved somewhere in 2023? So at the end of 2023, I would say we should look at a share price of 108.46, assuming that in the beginning of 2023, in the first quarter or something, we get approval from FDA. With that, I'd like to bring this video to an end. Please let me know what you think. And thanks for all your support so far. I'm trying to get more and more detail and in-depth reviews in place. It's a gradual process, but it's going to happen. And if you like this video, please press a like there so that more people can see this on YouTube and discover our channel. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It's absolutely free, and let us grow this community. And to all the subscribers who have been with us for so long, thank you so much for encouraging this channel and being with us. Your constructive feedback is always welcome, and I'll continue to improve the contents of this channel, both in quality, depth, and otherwise. Thanks and have a great day. Bye for now.